Hello, everybody. Welcome to Powerhouse Fence Show. I'm Dan Turbyville, and I will be your host for the evening. Thanks for stopping by. Always appreciate all of you that are here and listen to the show. So, this will be a continuation of an episode we did a couple weeks ago. It was uh, getting into commercial fence. So, we did part one before. We're doing part two today. I'll start off and kind of go through a recap, really brief, of some of the stuff we covered last time, and then I will continue on and finish the rest of the steps, hopefully. There's a lot of notes for this. So hopefully I get through all of it. Anyway, this show is sponsored by Memphis Fence Company, Simpalo, and Valguard Strategies Group. Uh, Last week, I kind of changed the border here and the layout a little bit, and I added that logo, and I didn't get too deep into it, and I'm going to take a second and just explain what it is. So, Valguard is a design consulting company, and it came as a result of spending years bidding and installing fence projects that start with a set of plans. And you start with a set of plans that don't have all the information. You bid the job hoping that you're covered, and you go out and try to install the job. And then you figure out, at some point along that journey, you figure out the rest of the information. Maybe during the submittal phase, maybe in conversations with a contractor leading up to the install, maybe when you're actually on the job site, actually having began the install. And I doubt, I don't know for sure, but I don't think anyone likes the way that process is. I don't think owners like it. I don't think contractors like it. I don't think the design team likes it. I can tell you that I've been in situations several times in my life, normally around gates, where there's some problem with the design. And I tell them, hey, this design is not going to work. No, 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 do it that way. That's what so and so designed it, and it's going to be great. Okay. And we do it the way they said, and it doesn't work. And designers do not like that one bit. And then you have to go through this whole series of meetings, and you have to argue about whether you did it the way they wanted you to do it or not. And, if everything is the way they asked and all of this, it's just a mess. But anyway, all of those things are kind of what led me to start this company. And so far, I have had some clients that are in the design world, and I've helped them out with some projects, and it's been cool. I've been able to eh, show them missing information and, kind of connect the dots with them on some rules and regulations and stuff like that, and help them to really dial in the plan set and get it a little bit better before it goes out to bid. You're never going to get to where it's perfect and you can foresee every issue that might come up, but what we can do is get it pretty good. And if we get it pretty good, feel like I did good. We'll also go out and do, kind of assessments on people's sites. So we can go to a factory or distribution center, something that has security in mind. And we can walk the site with them. And we can say, hey, here's your weak points. Here's what we suggest for you to improve those. And that's the idea behind that. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but we'll see. I think there's a need for it, and I decided to try to do it. All right. So I mentioned the sponsors. We have some partners as well. They're listed down here on the bottom. So we have Fence News, Fence Industry Publication. They produce a magazine that you can subscribe to, and it has a lot of, they interview people and tell stories and, talk about latest trends and things like that. Good way to, stay in touch with what's going on in the industry. And EZG Manufacturing, they make the big orange equipment that you see at trade shows, the fence hog and things like that. We like their stuff. We use it. We put them on here. And Thornton Fence Consulting Group is the final partner that we will talk about today. And they do consults for fence companies and events. And I saw he was speaking at the AFA show that was in Yellowstone last week, earlier this week, now maybe, I'm not sure, but Yeah, I saw he had some taught some classes out there, so that's cool. I am alive. Phone number's on the bottom. It's really big. It stays there now. I made it to where it doesn't scroll. You can call me anytime you need to. Not really listening to anything exciting. Still going through Henry Ford's autobiography, trying to make my way through that. And I enjoy that. But if you enjoy that stuff, check it out. It's cool because you get to hear the history of his life and his businesses and things like that directly from him. And I enjoy that. I like hearing a lot about they, I guess in the early days of the car or the automobile, they wanted to race. Every is they said it he said as soon as cars were made, people wanted to know how fast they would go and whose car was faster and all of this stuff. And he did not like racing, right? Henry Ford did not like racing. And so he did it. And he told a story of where he challenged the fastest guy in the country to a race and they organized it all and everything. And he went and beat him. And he said that was the first time he had ever been in a race car. And I think that he built a revolutionary 4-cylinder, 80 horsepower motor to put in that car. And he said that it was the most exhilarating thing he'd ever experienced. And I think he said that going off of Niagara Falls would have been boring after that. But stuff like that, it's cool to hear. So, not too exciting. As always, I appreciate you all being here. If you have any suggestions for a show or questions or comments or anything else you would like to share, please feel free to do so. We've been talking about Make a Wish for a while now. And what I'd like to do is I would kind of like to, I guess, just touch on that one more time. So, what's happening right now with Make a Wish is we are having our wish celebration, is kind of the party where the child who's the recipient of the wish, their family, and us all get together, and we're gonna. I think that's when they'll learn that they have had a wish granted. And so we'll get to meet them and get to know them a little bit and hear about their wish because I don't even know what it is. And so that's going to be pretty cool. I think it's happening next Thursday afternoon during this time slot. So I don't know what y'all will be listening to, but that's where I'll be. All right. So now let's get into it. First, I'm going to kind of recap a little bit. And so we started last week or last time. I don't even know when it was, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, something like that. So we started last time and we talked about preparing yourself in your business, right? So we talked about research, making sure you understand what kind of license that you have, talk to people that do it, um, all the requirements, insurance, safety stuff, drug testing, PPE, all these things. And the one piece that I forgot to mention that I think is probably pretty important is go do it, right? Don't sit around and prepare for the next 8 years if it's something you want to do. I think going into it, understanding what you're getting into is a big deal. It's important, but don't forget the part of going and actually doing it. If you get to the point where you're ready to try it and you want to stick your neck out there, don't forget to do it. So that was step one, plus a bonus. Step two was to build your team and your infrastructure, right? So we talked about installers, vendors, suppliers, insurance, bankers, your system that you're going to have, all of that stuff. And then step three, I think, is where we wrapped it up. And we got this step was called learn the trade beyond installation, right? And we talked a lot about plans and specs. I listened to a bit of it because honestly, I don't remember what I talked about. And I remember practice, right? So practice and get someone to check your homework. So if you get a plan set and you want to do a takeoff on it, hopefully you've networked at some event and you've met some people and you know someone who would be willing to spend a little bit of time and look over a plan set that you've done. And if you do that, do two or three or however many you can convince people to do and have them take a look at it and say, hey, you missed this. And when I say do it, I don't mean just say, oh, I found fence on this sheet. No, I mean like give them a scope letter. Okay. Tell them it's 1,742 feet of 6 foot tall chain link with 3 strands of barbed wire. The barbed wire goes on 45-degree arms. The line posts are 2-inch, 40 weight, da 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 da. Right? I mean, actually, like detail out everything that you see based on what you found in the plans and specs, and ask them to check that. And I think that's a good way to do it because you're not bidding a job and then finding out later that you missed something or you messed it up or whatever. Like you're doing it in a safe space, right? So it's a practice world. And I would run through that as many times as you think it takes for you to feel comfortable, and then start off with smaller, easier jobs. Don't I still have that issue where I like to just dive in head first and go for the biggest, craziest thing I can find. But I think getting started with something easier and simpler and making sure that you understand the fundamentals is going to be great. Don't forget to read the specs. Okay. And when you read the specs, don't just go straight to the section that's about fence. You got to check your insurance requirement stuff, and you got to check the schedule, and you got to kind of look through all of these different things to make sure you understand what's going to be required. Sometimes jobs have specific insurance coverage they require that cost you extra money. Sometimes you have to send people through certain background checks and drug screening and maybe certain safety training, and maybe you have to be trained on every piece of equipment you're going to use, and you need to know all that stuff on the front end. So spend a little time looking through the spec book more so than just looking at the fence. Yeah, what did I say? Read the specs and understand the job, obviously, right? There are there are classes available. There's people that would be willing to teach you this stuff. You just got to find them and make sure it's somebody that knows what they're doing. Uh, I don't have any person in mind that would offer this that doesn't know what they're doing. That's just a general thing, right? We got to be careful who we choose to hire. I Back some years ago, maybe in 2013-ish, I hired some consulting company, and I have no idea why. Right? I didn't know what in the world was going on. I was completely young and dumb and thought I knew something, and it was way too arrogant. And looking back now, I realize there were a many a flaw that happened back then. And I mean, still I mess up stuff all the time. So it's not like I am exempt from mistakes by any means. But anyway, I hired this consulting company. I don't even know how or why I found these people, but they convinced me to do it. And I spent a significant amount of money with them. And I really don't know that I benefited anything. Maybe some, right? Maybe having someone who's been around professionals and stuff like that and just kind of getting a little bit more shifted to that mindset may have been a benefit. But there's not a single document or piece of paper in our operation that we use as a result of that. I don't think there's anything in our process that we use anywhere that's a result of that. I 100% guarantee you I could learn more by going to a couple fence events, sitting in some of the classrooms, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, whatever it is. And I could learn more from those than I did from that guy. And all of those things that I talked about are relatively inexpensive. Going to classes, yeah, you got to spend some money, right? Podcast, YouTube, all of that stuff, it's free unless you pay for the premium version or something. But even if you do, it's way cheaper than hiring somebody who doesn't really know. That's why I say if you're going to hire somebody, hire someone that has applicable, practical experience to what you're hiring them to do. I do have a partner, Thornton Fence Consulting Group. You might be able to reach out to them and talk to them if you're looking to hire a consultant. Robert and Michael Whitaker and their team, Purple Coaching, they're good people. They know what they're doing. Just like I said, hire somebody that knows. There's others, right? All right. Anyway, so we went through that whole thing. I'm going to reiterate one thing right here again because it is. I don't know why I feel so passionate about a couple of things. One, if you're going to bid a job, understand how you're bidding the job. Understand what your overhead is, what your margins have to be for you to survive, and bid it based on those numbers. Okay. Bid it based on the logic, bid it based on data. Don't bid it based on emotion. So don't get excited about the job and just throw all the logic out the window and go bid it just because it's a cool job. Bid it based on data and information. And then the other piece of it that's, uh, my the thing that I feel passionate about is make your proposal short. I know this is how I ended the episode, part one episode. Make the proposal short. Don't make it 10 pages long. And if you just have that overwhelming desire to make it 10 pages long, put the scope and the price on page one so they can throw the rest of it away and don't have to dig through it. Okay. When you're bidding to general contractors, I think it's a little bit of a different world than when you're bidding directly to owners, either in the residential or the commercial space. Some of those people care to know who you are and what you do and would spend time looking through your 10 pages of information. I don't think there's a ton of general contractors that are going to do that, at least on bid day. Now, nothing is always, right? So there's definitely scenarios where they want to vet you, but I don't think that's the way to do it. All right, so that's the recap. So we made it back to where we were last time, and now it's time for a drink break. One of these days, I'm going to come up with something cool to put in there instead of crickets. But here we are. All right, so let's talk about the cash flow cycle. And this kind of goes back to the research piece, right? This is kind of tied into step one, and this is just understanding what you're getting into. Um, I've done several episodes on this cash flow cycle in the general contractor world. And guess what? I'm going to talk about it again. And I hope that somebody cares. So, the timing of it, you bill around the 20th, 25th, somewhere in that neighborhood of the month, right? So, in September, when we build somewhere in that 20 to 25th range, we build for the work completed in the month of September. So we build from September 1st up until the 20th or 25th. And then we have to kind of forecast what we're going to complete between then and the end of the month. It's hard, right? So how did we do? Well, I know there was one job we started that we didn't bill anything on. So we worked on it a few days last week. It wasn't included in the billing cycle. That's going to happen. We'll make up for it in the next billing cycle. But what you don't want to do is wrap up a big job and not submit a bill or spend an entire month working on a project and forget to bill it because it will put you another month behind on getting paid. So you have to understand, make sure you have your ducks in a row, make sure you bill when you're supposed to bill and bill how you're supposed to bill and bill who you're supposed to bill. Okay. Then you're going to wait 45 days to get paid. Some contractors operate a little different, some owners operate a little different, but as a general rule of thumb, plan 45 days. Sometimes it takes longer. Sometimes you do what I just did and you go to bill a job and realize that the change order wasn't even processed and you couldn't even bill it because the change order wasn't there that was approved 3 months ago. And that sucks. The contractor is making it right because they said, well, we should have issued the change order when we approved the work. And they're all, hey, we appreciate you doing it on good faith. We've done work for these people several times in the past. And I managed the job. And, I just mess up things sometimes, but I should have done a better job and made sure, hey, where's my change order? Because we're going to have to build this thing. We're going to have to order material. We're going to have to do work, whatever it is. We did have a contract, but there was a pretty significant change order that was added on top of the contract that I've yet to see. So you don't want to be in that spot, right? You don't want to be scrambling around because if you have a contract sitting in your inbox that you haven't signed for the past 2 or 3 months and you try to bill, they're not going to be like they are in my situation. because in my situation, they should have issued the change order. In your situation, you didn't sign the contract and send it back, so they ain't worried about you. But anyway, you bill around the 20th, 25th, somewhere in the neighborhood. You wait 45 days. So we build it at the end of September. We're going to get paid in mid-November. All right. Now, we've talked about it before, but there's things that you can do to kind of expedite that a little bit, and you can bill for stored materials. So that's not really going to expedite it. But what you can do is, if we got material in August, then, or we paid for material in August, because that's what a lot of them want to see now. A lot of them want to see that you've paid for the material, not that you received it. But if we had material in August, paid for material in August, whatever the requirement is, then we could have billed for that material in August. And so we would have been getting paid here in another, what, week, 10 days, something like that. And so it just is managing that cash flow cycle. You got to stay on top of it instead of, kind of the business to business world and the residential world. Well, I mean, you get deposits in residential, right? But in those worlds, you just kind of bill when the job is done most of the time. In this world, depending on the job, if you're doing a small, job that's not a lot of money, then yeah, you might just bill once when it's done. But if you're doing a job that takes multiple months, you're not going to wait till the end. So that cash flow is, I I know I keep rambling on right here, and I'm staying on this thing for a minute because it is so important. Okay. Understanding what your margin needs to be for you to survive and make money and grow, because you have to make money in order to grow, then that's important. I'm just passionate about the proposal thing. And then the cash flow. That's a huge thing. And I feel this way about it, and I want to sit here right here because I don't want anybody to go out there thinking they're going to get paid the day they finish the job and then figure out, "Oh, I have to wait till the end of the month to bill, and then it's going to take 6 weeks after that for me to get paid. And how am I going to pay payroll for the next 8 weeks?" Right? I don't want you in that spot. So just understand, it'll eat through cash quick. All right, you gotta have all the paperwork right. So if you're new and you're just getting into it, start the process early, send it to them, call them, say, "Hey, can you take a look at that paperwork, make sure everything's right? I wanna make sure I did it so that we actually get in the billing cycle this month." Because I promise you, I've had times where we would call 60 days after we thought we billed, and we would find out, "Oh, well, your paperwork wasn't right, so we didn't turn it in, but you can fix it and we'll put it in this month's cycle." That's crazy, right? But it happens. So you got to make sure all your ducks are in a row. Everything's done. Bill right. It Cash flow is critical. It's a huge thing. I had a Simpala subscriber call me one night, and it was probably, I don't know, 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock here. And so he calls me up, and you could tell, like, he was feeling a lot of pressure and a lot of stress about this thing. And he told me, he said, "Man, I've got 2 jobs that we're working on right now." He said, "When I started, I had $265,000 sitting in the bank, and right now, I don't know how I'm gonna pay payroll next week." And he's like, "I don't know what to do," because those 2 jobs ate up all of the cash that he had, and he didn't know what to do. So I mean, I feel your pain, but I promise you it happens. Cash flow has probably put a many a people out of business. Watch out for that. So one thing that you can do is, you have a relationship with a banker. Use that relationship. Monitor the cash flow. Look at reports, because I know you're using some accounting software that has reporting capabilities and it has forecasting capabilities and things like that. So stay on top of that stuff. Make sure you're putting good information in the accounting software so that it's going to give you good information out. But monitor that stuff. Make it a point once a week, once a day, whatever it is, go in and look at it and see how things are trending. I know there's people that have folks inside their organization that give them a report every single day. And that report will be money in, money out, receivables, payables. right? So how much did we deposit yesterday? How much did we spend yesterday? What's our current receivable? What's our current payable? Every single day they look at those numbers. And all of that is just to stay on top of cash flow. But anyway, the banker thing. Okay. Use the relationship with your banker. Talk to him. Say, hey, we're getting into this commercial fence world. We're going to try to start working for general contractors. Here's the thing I'm worried about. What can we do now to be prepared for when that situation arises? Okay. Hopefully, one of the things they tell you to do is set up a line of credit. A line of credit is a super powerful tool. It's basically a credit card. So you're going to pay a small renewal fee if you renew it once a year or once every 2 years or whatever that is. You're going to pay a little bit of a renewal fee probably, but you're not paying a monthly fee for having it. You shouldn't be. And you're not going to pay interest on anything unless you draw down on that line of credit. So it's not meant to be a long-term loan. In fact, the bank will try to get rid of it if you treat it like a long-term loan. So man, back years ago, I've told this story on here before, I know. Back years ago when I bought Memphis Fence, at some point within the first year, there was a decent amount of debt that was outstanding whenever I bought the company, and so I inherited all of that debt. And the bank really freaked out because my grandfather had died, who was the guarantor on all of that debt. And so they freaked out once then. And then Dodo 24-year-old me comes along and buys Memphis Fence. So now they're definitely freaking out again. And so they transferred our account to, I think they called it like a special assets division or something like that, which basically was the department of the bank whose job it was to get rid of loans and get rid of customers that they thought were high risk and they thought would default on the loans. And so I think they said, "Oh, hey, starting next month, your payment on these loans is going to be like 5 times what you've been paying, and the interest rate's going to triple." And that's just how they did it. And I said, "Oh, great, that's crazy." And we survived that for a few months, and then the banker that we still have a relationship with now came along, and we were able to rework some stuff and everything, and that's where that relationship started for me. But they can do that kind of stuff. I don't know all the details. I don't know how or why they can do that, but I experienced them doing it to me. Yeah, a line of credit. Okay. So, like I said, not meant to be a long term thing. You're only going to pay interest when you draw money on that line of credit. If you're doing a job and you turn in, I'm going to bill X amount of money this month, but I've put a lot of money into this job to get it done. I need to use my line of credit to float us for a few weeks. That's what it's there for. Okay. Like I said, it's not meant to be a long term thing, and your bank's not going to like that. So during World War II, shipbuilders, there was a handful of shipbuilders in the US that nearly went bankrupt during World War II. Okay. Whenever everybody is working 3 times their normal rate trying to build military equipment, including ships, and they almost went bankrupt doing it because they invested so much into the current construction, right? They're building ships. We build fence, but it's all current construction. They had invested so much money into the current construction that they ran out of cash. So progress payments were restructured and they redid the way that they were paying vendors to save these shipbuilders and to keep them going. I suspect it's probably the biggest thing they wanted to do, right? They didn't want a bunch of folks going out of business and their ship progress stopping. So they probably would have done whatever it took. But they restructured the way that they did progress payments and all that stuff and saved the shipbuilding industry during World War II. But that's a crazy story. So the work they were doing was very profitable, but they were not maintaining proper cash flow, and it nearly cost all of them their business. Step number 5 is to decide what you can handle. I think we've talked about maybe I've talked about this before. I don't know if I did in the previous episode or not, but uh, be realistic about what size job you can do. Don't just jump in and go straight to a project that's 10 times the biggest project you've ever done in your life. Don't do that on the first one. You know, you might get the urge and you might have the ability to do that later, but I wouldn't do it on your first one. I would sit down and analyze your financial position and come up with a realistic number of how much money you can invest into projects. And you know your margins. So incorporate that into there because you're still going to be paying the light bill and you're still paying insurance and you're still paying your phone bill and all of those other things. So incorporate that into there. Don't just say I can afford to spend X amount of dollars on material and that's, going to lead me to what size job I can do because you still have all the other things tied to it. So spend a little time, think about it and come up with a number that is your max size job and reevaluate it. Okay. Just because you decide that's the number today doesn't mean that's going to be the same number in January or next year, at this time or whatever that is. Like you can reevaluate that number and you can change it, but decide what size job you're going to go after. Decide what type of work you want to go after. Okay. Are you really good at doing a certain thing? And that might be where you want to start. Again, this is getting into commercial fence part two, right? So I'm not talking once you've been doing it for 6 or 8 years or, 3 years even, and you've got some experience and you got your feet wet. I'm talking when you're first getting into it. Decide what type of work you're going to get into. Again, I would say something that you're good at, something that you can be successful doing, something is profitable for your business. And so now you know what size job and you know what type of job is realistic and what you should go after. And it's going to be easier to learn this process and to learn the dance if it's an easy job for you to do, or it's a job, I don't want to say easy, but it's one that you understand how you have to do. Now, the other thing to this is how many of those jobs can you do at one time? Okay. Can you do one, two, three? How many do you want to try to sell at once? Because I don't know what it is, but we find ourselves in this scenario where we'll have 4 jobs that we sell over the course of 3 years, and they all have to be done at the same time. And if you're not here Monday on all 4 of these jobs, it's going to be a catastrophe. And that might be a phone call that we get on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday. And you just got to be prepared for those scenarios. And you can sort all that out. Okay. You can stay on top of that stuff. Look at preliminary schedules. You understand the project because you're looking at the project. You see the schedule. You know where fence is going to fall in that schedule, or at least have an idea. Okay. You're probably going to do temporary fence at the beginning of the job. You're probably going to do permanent fence at the end of the job, but that's not always the case. So just try to think through the process of the whole construction and figure out where's it going to fit in. Okay, we're probably going to do this job at this time. Whatever that time is you come up with is probably not going to be right because that schedule is going to change, but at least it gives you an idea. If you know this job is going to happen next October and there's another job that comes along that they're ready for now and another job that comes along that they're ready for in 3 years, well, now you know all of that stuff is spaced out. So follow me. All right. So add all of that stuff to your capability statement. We did talk about that maybe in step 1 or 2. Simple 1-page thing that goes through who you are, what you can do, what you want to bid. Right. So incorporate all these things into there. And for the capability statement, I want to include, you know, maybe like a little brief bit of experience in the industry or something like that. And then what size job you're looking for, what kind of jobs you're looking for. And then you can say, hey, I do have this insurance coverage. I have this contractor's license. I have this, whatever you have, right? Just kind of put your credentials in there. So you're almost making like a resume, except not really a resume, but Something along those lines. And that's what you're going to send out to general contractors when you're trying to get on their bidder list. That way they understand what you can do. So again, step 6 is start small. And it's easier to work with local, smaller general contractors than it's going to be to work for the largest general contractors in the nation or in the world. The smaller local ones, they tend to be a little bit easier to get along with, and they have less paperwork requirements and things like that. Normally, they're working on smaller jobs, which is again, where I suggested you start smaller jobs. And so these smaller local general contractors typically are working on the smaller jobs, and they will be a little bit easier. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. And it's a good place to start off and try to get your feet wet, and then you can start building a portfolio. And once you get through the process a few times, you understand how it goes. Okay. You understand, oh, when I get a contract, here's what I need to do with it. When I am asked for submittals, here's what they're looking for. When I have to bill, here's how I do that. This is how long it's going to take to get paid, right? You understand all those things. Once you've been through it a few times, you kind of get the flow. Okay. And so that's what I mean. Start small. So that way, if you miss a billing cycle, it's not going to bankrupt you. All right. If forgot to you didn't get your contract executed properly, you didn't get your certificate of insurance squared away, you didn't get whatever, and you don't get entered in the billing cycle, it's not going to bankrupt you. So start with smaller jobs and build your portfolio. Just keep building on it. Just keep building. And you can keep pushing it. Again, you can go back and you can look at that max size job you want to do, and you can keep bumping that number up, 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 right? You can change it all the time. So keep adding, right? Just keep building one little piece at a time. You just keep building and then you get where you want to be. And you can always go back and adjust that capability statement. Honestly, I don't have a capability statement really. I've drafted some stuff here and there and sent to people when they've asked for it, but we don't really have one that we send out to people. But I mean, we've also done this for like what 54 years now. So uh, most folks that we're going to submit stuff to that are anywhere in this area, they know who we are. And again, there are new people that come in the area. We bid jobs in different areas to new people, stuff like that, and they want to know who we are sometimes. And so, I've kind of got a format of a thing that I draft when I need it, but I don't do it often enough. I don't maintain it, and I don't keep it up to date. Right, is what I'm saying. So we just do it when we're asked for it, and that's probably like once every few years. But anyway, keep building up to it. Okay. And I think it's a good idea to have a target in mind, right? And that target's always going to move. So really, if I have a target of revenue or if I have a target of a job size that I want to do or a job type or whatever, me personally, I don't think I ever get there, because if I start getting close to that target revenue, well, now I'm going to change my goal. Okay. If I start getting close to that job size that I want to hit, or I hit the job size I want to hit, well, now I set a new goal and I say, okay, I got to that point. Now my goal is XYZ. And so that's how I operate. You operate how you operate. There's a company. I honestly don't know if I'm going to say their name right, but Bechtel, Bechdel. And so they're a giant general contractor. Okay. And they were started by a guy named Warren Bechtel, and he started with a single mule, and he did very small jobs for the railroad. And he continuously grew and added a little more and added a little more and added a little more. And then they built the Hoover Dam, right? I believe the Hoover Dam was the largest construction project that had ever happened at the time, maybe by some metrics. But they started with a mule doing little railroad jobs, and then they wound up building Hoover Dam. So start small, just keep building, right? You can get to your Hoover Dam. You just got to keep building. So now I want to talk a little bit about getting in the door with general contractors. So this is step 7, right? We've done a bunch of stuff getting to this point, and now we're ready to actually go out there and start doing some networking. And a lot of this stuff is only going to cost time. You already have a phone, you already have an email, you already have that stuff. And so you just have to spend the time to do this thing. So one easy way that you can do this is just get on the phone and start calling estimators. And what you want to do is maybe a little brief introduction. Hey, my name is Dan Turbyville, and I'm with Memphis Fence Company. I would like to see what I needed to do to be added to your bidders list. I would like to be able to bid projects with you. And I mean, that's kind of how I'm going to start the conversation off, right? And we'll see how it goes from there. And if they start asking questions about what we do, who we are, things like that, then I'm going to have that conversation. If they just say, yeah, send me an email and just say you want to be added to the bidder list, I'm going to do that. I'm just going to let them take the lead and I'm going to follow their lead wherever it goes. That's how I'm going to handle it. Uh, so again, just call. Sending emails, man, I get so many emails every single day. I can't stand this stupid thing because it catches the emails that I don't want it to catch. But we have this spam filter and it annoys the crap out of me because somebody will call me and say, "Man, you didn't reply to my email. I sent it to you 4 days ago." Well, yeah, because it got stuck in there. And then you have to go log in and you have to find it and you have to tell it to deliver it. And sometimes they have to be approved by the administrator, which is our IT company, and all of this stuff. It's just a pain in the butt. But they want it there, and it does stop a lot of the, like, phishing emails and stuff like that, so it does have its purpose, but it's still frustrating. Anyway, emails get deleted, emails get stuck in the junk folder, emails get ignored. I delete more emails every single day than I read, for sure. If I am going through emails and the subject line looks like it's someone trying to sell me something, I probably just delete it and move on. So, again, I suggest the phone call. Even better is to attend local events where you can actually face to face network and you can start building relationships. And you build those relationships, and it's going to lead to phone calls and it's going to lead to emails and invitations to bid and all of these things that are ultimate, like, the goal, right? It's going to lead to all those things. So find these events. Those might be associations. You might join a contractors association and start building some relationships in there. You might have to sponsor an event or two at those contractor associations. That's kind of the way it works. You start getting involved and more involved and more involved. And now they start calling you and saying, "Hey, why don't you sponsor this thing we have coming up?" And then they call you and they say, "Hey, why don't you come help us?" Right? Why don't you volunteer and work a station at the skeet shoot event or what sporting clay shoot event or whatever that is, right? They might ask you to sponsor something. They might ask you to volunteer, but just stick with it. And remember, things like that, you get out what you put in. So if you go to one event a year and expect to walk in there and meet 27 people and, walk away with 10 new jobs, that is not a realistic expectation. It's probably not going to happen. You got to be consistent and you got to attend those things. Another way to find jobs, and I don't like this way as much, it's a necessary evil. And I will tell you, we bid a lot of jobs, and a lot of those jobs come from invitations to bid on projects. We get a lot of them, and we get invited to bid on every dumpster gate that happens in the Pacific Northwest. And I say that just to be dramatic, but it's a long way from me. I'm in Memphis, Tennessee, and we get invitations for dumpster gates. I promise you that are 8, 10, 12 hours from us. And it's like, why would you even think I'm going to bid that? I don't even like doing dumpster gates. We're doing some right now that are a real pain in the butt. But you start getting those. And I would rather get invited by a contractor to bid every dumpster gate on the planet, waiting for that one to come along that is a fence job that makes sense for us to bid. And I think it's worthwhile clicking that little no. Okay. When they send you an invite, if they're using any kind of system to do it with, it's going to ask you to respond. and it's going to ask you to say yes, no, maybe. And I think it's appropriate to say no when you're not going to bid. And so I did an episode called It's Okay to Say No Sometimes, and I still stand behind that statement right there. But there are bid platforms out there, okay? There's a bunch of them. Uh, Following the same logic, I would suggest you start small. Look maybe for like a local builders exchange. Maybe there's one in your region of the state. Maybe there's one that covers your state. Those are normally going to be cheaper. Okay. I have not looked into this for every region and every state, so I don't know that for sure. Might be different where you are. But from my experience, the builders exchange that you can find are normally cheaper and they're a good place to start, especially when you're just kind of getting into it, right? I, Maybe you got a ton of money sitting around that you're just going to dump into it and hope for the best. It's probably not a very good strategy, but uh, I would start smaller. I would start with the cheaper ones. They normally have a good selection of jobs on them. They're not gonna have as many, so it's not gonna be as overwhelming, and then once you start bidding jobs to contractors, they're gonna start inviting you, okay? You'll get added to their bidders list, and they'll start sending you invites for other jobs, and it just kind of becomes this snowball effect going on. So you can grow into bigger platforms, okay? You got stuff like I Square Foot, Construct Connect, Building Connected, and on and on and on and on. There's a ton of them out there, and the when you get into those, they're normally more expensive, bigger money kind of stuff, and honestly, it can be a bit overwhelming with how many jobs they have listed on them. I think if I go look on the big one that we subscribe to, I think there's probably, man, I bet there's 8 to 10,000 projects that are in there that have been updated in the last 60 days. And that's normally the filter that I start with is what's been updated in the past 60 days. And then from there, I'll narrow it down to what I'm looking for. But like I said, there's probably 8 or 10,000 jobs in there throughout at any given time throughout the course of the year. It's a lot. And so what happens is where if you had a list of 10,000 jobs that you could go look at. And okay, let me clarify something real quick. I said they were updated in the past 60 days. Not all of those are currently bidding. Okay. And so you have to filter it down and get to the ones that are currently bidding. And those are the ones that really matter because a lot of them are going to have maybe bid results or they're still in the conceptual design phases, different things like that. But there's a lot of jobs. And so if you had this list of, let's say, even half of them, okay, 5,000 projects that you had access to bid right now, what are you going to do? How are you even going to start weeding through what's what and trying to figure out which jobs to bid? If I go log into our local builders exchange, there might be anywhere from let's say 60 to 120 jobs in there, depending on the time of year. A lot of those are going to be like HVAC upgrades, roof replacement, things like that. Yeah, I might glance at it to see if it's an HVAC job. There might be a fence around it. And, they might have to take a part of the fence down to replace a unit and then put the fence back up. So you might have a little job there. If it's a roof job, you might have some temporary fence that they need to put up around it, right? So there might be a little opportunity in those, but they're not big fence scope projects on a lot of them. But there is a good bit of fence that goes through our local builders exchange. And it probably cost, I bet it's a tenth or less of what we pay for the big uh I don't even know what you call them, bid platforms. So I know I keep talking about that. Let's move on. Pre-qualification. Some people might ask you to do a pre-qualification. Okay. That would be a good thing to learn whenever you are saying, hey, I'm so and so. Can we bid jobs to you? Yeah, but you got to be pre qualified. Okay. Can you go ahead and send me that pre qualification stuff? We'll get that knocked out. And so that's a good time to have that conversation, right? Because you don't really want to find out, oh, you submitted your bid and then they call and they say, oh, you're not pre qualified and bid time is in 42 minutes. Can you get that back to us? And you go, oh, crap. What do I do now? Uh, so just that situation might be just inevitable. And depending on the contractor and all of that stuff, they might have a little wiggle room with using your number, anticipating that you're going to be pre-qualified. But some jobs, you are not bidding unless you have completed their pre-qualification form. So just be careful of that. That's a thing that exists. The uh yeah. So there's one that I can think of that we have to do the pre-qualification for every 2 years. And they require it no matter who you are. If you're going to work with them, you got to do it every 2 years. And I think this joker is like 25 or 28 pages long. And then we have to add a bunch of stuff to it. I mean, they want financials, they want insurance certificates, they want all kinds of stuff added in there with it that you have to turn in to go along with that pre-qualification form. So again, the whole 42-minute scenario, you're not doing all that stuff. So I put the capability statement in here again. We already talked about that. I'm going to skip on past that. So Henry Turner built Turner Construction, and he built it by networking with general contractors and architects. So through those relationships, he was able to get chances at some big projects like Madison Square Garden and Yankee Stadium, showing that networking is very important. We actually recently hired a guy, and his job is networking and social media, community relations. I don't even know, PR. And my instructions to him were something along the lines of, I want you to attend every event that happens that makes sense for us to go to. If our customer is there, I want you to go get them. And he's also doing social media and an array of other things, but that's a big part of his job, is just going out and networking. And honestly, it should be me doing it, but I understand that what I have the capacity to do, and there's way too many things and I can't do it. I understand me and I know that I can't. Okay, step 8 is grow with intention. And this is the last step. So congratulations, we made it to the end. So bonding is a thing. We've talked about that on here before. Performance and payment bonds, bid bonds, those are all things. Some contractor license require that you issue a bond to the state every year. I think we have one or two that require that. Not all of them do. Some of them do. But it's a good idea to go ahead and try to find a bond agent. And with us, our insurance company also does bonds as well. And I know I've talked to a few insurance companies, and that kind of seems to be a thing that happens a lot. They go hand in hand. So again, that relationship with your insurance company, your insurance agent, is going to be a big deal. Make sure just have that conversation. You know, you're if you're going to start small, start with a local general contractor, start on a smaller job. You're probably not going to need a bond on your first job, but be aware it's a thing that exists, and go ahead and just start talking to somebody, and you can grow into it. Okay. Just know that it happens, and you might get a phone call from somebody asking you about a bond. And if you don't have one, you're just be honest and be like, hey, we can work on it. Okay. But no, I said you don't have one. They have to issue it for every project. So it's not like you can just have a standing one anyways. But if you don't have a relationship with somebody that can issue a bond, then I would just tell them we can work on it and try to figure it out, but I don't have a immediate solution. And I'd probably try to word it in some way that's like, oh yeah, it's not a big deal. I can go work on getting one, or something like that. But I also wouldn't try to be misleading about it and say, oh yeah, no problem, I'll just call Bob. And there is no Bob. So again, hopefully your insurance agent can help you out with that. And so we're already in it, right? We've completed a few jobs, we've grown, we've adjusted our capability statements, we've stayed on top of all of our financials, we've done all of this stuff. We've got a relationship built with a bonding agent. And so now we're scaling up, okay? So now we can start getting into larger projects, working with larger general contractors, and we can we now understand the process, okay? And we can just keep growing. That's it. We just keep growing. And again, I have that problem. And, I just want to jump straight into building Hoover Dam. Uh, I just have a problem with slowing down, and I just like to go fast and do big things. And it's a little bit scary sometimes and probably nerve wracking for some of the people that are around me, to be honest with you. But I don't know what's wrong with me or why I am that way, but that's just how I like to do it. It's hard to slow down. And, you know, I talked about how the bid board that we use has some 8 or 10,000 jobs or whatever that's on there. Well, I want to bid them all. Right. And if they're not bidding, if they're in design, I mean, I want to help them with the design. And if they're at any point during the process where we might have a chance of doing something on the job, I want to try to have that chance. So I want to go after all of them. I remember, so Perry was on the show last week, and I remember if it was when we hired Perry or someone else, but my wife was like, "How many estimators do you need?" And I said, "Well, actually, I want 18 of them. All right, I want to fill every corner of every room in our whole office, and I want to have an estimator sitting at a desk over there bidding something." Right, and that's just what I want to do. But again, I'm dumb, and I like to do that crazy stuff, and I like to punish myself for whatever reason. But a big part of this is going to be your reputation, okay? And you have to protect your reputation. You don't want to get in over your head, and you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot, and you don't want to burn bridges, and there's a whole list of things you don't want to do. So protect the reputation and try to stay on top of everything as best as you can. We all screw up. We all make mistakes. It's going to happen. And just do the best you can and make it right when it does happen. So protect your reputation, okay? And a huge, huge part of that is two things. That's it. That's it. Just two things. Do what you say you're going to do. So when you tell somebody, I'm going to have that to you today, I'm going to have someone on site tomorrow, I'm going to meet with you Monday, whatever that is, do what you say you're going to do, right? It's a big thing. Do what you say you're going to do. And then what's the second piece of it? Oh man, there was two pieces, and I got so distracted by doing what said I was going to do that I forgot the second piece of it. Oh, well, let me just reiterate: I- if you plan to have a crew there on Monday, and something goes sideways, and you can't pick up the phone and call them. I remember the second piece. Don't let them call you. If something comes up and you cannot accomplish the thing you said you were going to do, pick up the phone and call them and tell them. All right. The second piece of it, don't hide. When they call you mad about something, because again, that's a thing that's going to happen. When they call you mad, answer the phone, take the freaking chewing and make it right, move on. That's it. That's all we can do. So, again, do what you say you're going to do. Don't hide when there's a problem. Be available, stay on top of it, and do the best you can to get out of I don't mean get out of it like escape it, but I mean get out of the trouble, okay? And fix it. So, you don't want to get kicked off a job site. I promise you. Uh there's been maybe in the past year and a half, there's been two or three situations where we've been called because somebody that was hired on the job was not doing what they're supposed to do, and they have to start this process of moving from one sub to another sub. And I've never been on that side of it, but I have been on I've been us who was the second sub coming in to take over for the first. And I can tell you, just from hearing what I've heard, it's a freaking mess that they have to deal with. And I suspect that contractor or those people that are involved will have no interest in calling that sub that they had to kick off the job. So you don't want to be in that spot. And I got two more things. So one is continuous education. Okay. So stay up to date on like things that are changing. And you don't want to wind up and be the person that I was gonna say I was taught to be. I was grown up to be. I don't know. Something you don't want to be the person that I used to be where it's like, oh man, what are they gonna teach me? I ain't listening to none of that stuff. I know what I'm doing. Right. That's not the mentality you want to have. And I suspect if you're listening to this thing and you're still here at an hour and 32 seconds, you probably don't have that mentality. But stay stay up to date on current trends, and it never hurts to listen to what somebody else is doing. Right? No matter where you are in your journey, it never hurts to listen and think about, is there anything that they're saying that I could maybe apply to my business, even if it's a variation of what they're saying, where I take this idea, twist it around a little bit, and put it into my world. That's the thing that I listen for. Okay. Because I I try to be open minded, and I try to understand that there's people out there that are better than me. They've been doing it longer than me. They know more than me. They have more experience than me, whatever that is. And I'm listening for some words of wisdom from those people all the time. And along those same lines of continuous improvement is to refine your systems. So don't get complacent and say, man, this thing that we're doing, it's worked just fine since 1964, and we're just going to keep doing it this way. Right? We use this piece of paper to write this on, and we use this piece of paper to write this on. And when we fill it out, we put it in that drawer, and that's where it goes. And that's how we're going to do it forever. Uh, you know, it's working right now. Okay. But just always kind of have that thought in the back of your mind of, what could we do that's better than what we're doing today? And you kind of have to get to the point where you're working on your business and not in your business all the time to try to make those improvements and make those adjustments. But if you just keep growing, remember, you can grow and you can build Hoover Dam one day. And if you get to the point where you're doing that, you might be able to spend some time working on your business. Well, you should be able to. But just always think about those systems, right? And think about the ways that things go through your process. I know one day I wrote down kind of a journey of a job or a customer. And I mean, I wrote down every single step, right? So they find us some kind of way. Step one, they call us. Step two, we take their information. They become a lead, right? And I just went through that whole process from all the way from start to finish. And then what I did was I wrote down the person who would be in our team who would handle that step. And it was amazing how many times that same job got bounced around from person to person inside of our office, and how many steps there were involved. And if there's anything that you can do to streamline any of that process, it's probably worth doing. Nowadays, you've got all kinds of technological advancements, right? With AI and everything else that's happening right now. So there's a lot of opportunity for changes and expedite. That's not a right word. Making your system more efficient, right? There's a lot of opportunity for that. And so just kind of think about that stuff and keep improving it, right? Just again, it's a little bit at a time. If you walk in one day and decide you're going to change every single thing about your business, you're probably not going to change anything. So just start with one thing and fix that one, then move to the next one, then move to the next one, move to the next one. And that might honestly just be how this piece of paper is moved around your office. Okay. It can be something simple like that. It might be the way that you communicate. It might be your efficiency, right? You might try to focus on efficiency in one particular place. I wouldn't go out and just say, I'm going to paint a giant stroke across this paper called efficiency, and that's what we're going to tackle. You got to narrow it down and focus on the one thing. And with that, we have made it through 2 episodes of getting into commercial fence. And I'm going to end this, and I'll see you next week. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you being here.